Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I know probably the number one thing on a lot of your minds here in the western part of the United States has been the forecast graphics you've seen released recently showing this major temperature anomaly difference between the Northwest and the West Coast and the eastern half of the country. And we're certainly going to be talking about the pattern that gets into this. It's certainly something we've been discussing now for a while, but give me a moment before we get into that because I want to talk with you about some of the recent rainfall we've had down here in parts of Arizona. Remember, we were talking about over the last week and a half or so that we were potentially going to be bringing up some tropical moisture that would be getting into Arizona and blowing up over the mountains and taking on off in a direction like this. And we had some locally very heavy rainfall amounts, including reports of tornadoes, and some of these storms were quite impressive. Take a look at this satellite animation. This was yesterday, so you can clearly see the trajectory of the winds here over the tops of the mountains, blowing the tops of these storms over the parts of the Four Corner states here. But this is some very deep convection, deep thunderstorm action here, supplied with a lot of moisture. And when you put it all together, look at the lightning strikes we had out of this. Across North America here, we had 90,000 strikes yesterday, and a large number of them were concentrated right in through this part of the desert Southwest. And one of my favorite videos that emerged yesterday, this is from a great follow on Twitter, Mike Olbinski. Follow this guy if you're into weather and some pretty amazing photography. He caught some of the dust being kicked up from the outflow of some of these storms. We call these dust nados or gust nados. Sometimes they circulate, they spin up a little bit, but it kind of shows you how dry things were leading into this. And we normally would be at the end of our monsoon season right about now and have had plenty of precipitation, but parts of the Southwest very, very dry this year, and the monsoonal season much weaker. But look, you can see them. See the circulations in here? Again, these are little circulations, dust nados as we like to call them, and they don't do much damage, but they're impressive to look at here. So I thought you might like to see that video from Mike. Again, great follow on Twitter. Okay, when we get out to the bigger picture, this is what we're looking at, and great model support here from the European and the GFS coming together to kind of show us this track. Now, for much of the next several days, we're going to keep a close eye on the presence of a larger ridge sitting in this area. So our trajectory of our storm systems, you're going to see, is going to be coming in this direction. And one of the reasons why that ridge is in place there is what you're about to see in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Plus, this time of year, combined with the warm water temperatures in this area, we expect to get ridging here. But the storm systems then come in like this, they then dip down and then race off in that direction. And that particular storm track is going to be one that's going to be very active for parts of the Intermountain West in the coming days. And we do need to start talking about snow getting to lower and lower elevations because of this. So let's get into some of the bigger picture ideas here. Animating in front of you here, this is what the flow of the jet stream looks like getting out all the way, pretty deep into October here. We're all the way out to the 9th. And a couple of features that keep showing up. If we take it back to the beginning, okay, this ridge that keeps showing up here in the Gulf of Alaska is a dominating factor because what it's going to do is it's going to send storm systems around the edge. It's around its periphery, and they come in from the northwest like this. And the dominance of that ridge as we get out toward the end of this week into the weekend is what's going to be critical, because the models have been hinting at for a while now the development of a pretty large Gulf of Alaska ridge in through here, allowing for deep troughing to settle in by the end of the week. Now, California, before we get to this, you're going to be seeing much above average temperatures. So I'm talking, we're getting up into the triple digits in the Central Valley, both San Joaquin and the Sacramento Valley in the coming days. But this trough sweeping in at the end of the week is going to cut things down and cool things off. That same trough is going to be very supportive for snow at higher elevation in the mountains, so some early season snowpack there. But this is a pretty highly amplified pattern. And normally if I said, wow, we have a ridge building in here and a ridge over parts of Greenland, I would start to be talking about a pattern that's blocked and potentially going to stay this way for a while. But what we notice is, as we continue to play forward, those features tend to get washed out. And the pattern does evolve once we get into the first week of the month of October. But until then, we've got a pretty highly amplified pattern developing here. One thing I'm on the lookout for is as we get out to the 7th, 8th, and 9th of the month, we do start to see the atmosphere advertising that high over low pattern again. And this is one where it tends to come fast in through this direction. So I want to make one simple point. California, you're not going to hear me talk too much about precipitation right now, but if we do develop this high over low pattern, we could be bringing in some pretty strong winds and quite a bit of moisture basically straight off of Hawaii into California. But I'm talking about October 8th, 9th, 10th time frame. This is a setup that could be bringing in quite a bit of moisture, one of those atmospheric river events into California. So sit tight. We're going to keep an eye on it to see how well it evolves here. Okay, to show you the moisture and where it's going before then, though, take a look at this animation. What we notice here is that the flow is going around that bigger ridge initially, and then it changes up once we get past the middle end of this week. So what am I talking about? So notice that as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday of this week, you can just see the flow coming around something like this. That's why we do have active weather. And what I mean by that is chances of precipitation here in the Pacific Northwest in the near term. But once that bigger ridge gets established into the Gulf of Alaska, watch the drier air come into the northwest and press all the way down into California and into the southwest. Now, the only reason why it looks drier here is because it's cold. Cold air cannot contain as much water and water vapor as warm air can. And as a consequence, with that deep trough settling in here, boy, we're going to be bringing in some much lower humidity levels and drying some things out in the near term. But like I said, we need to watch out beyond October 5th, 6th, and 7th for the flow pattern to then adjust and start to bring moisture in from this direction. I've seen that in some of the operational models, and I'm going to have to keep a close eye on it once we get, again, past where you just see this image here. So we put that all together. This is what we're looking at in terms of precipitation through the next 9 days. Now, I know your eyes are probably attracted to the big bullseye of precipitation in here. It's all a part of the same story. With that ridge that sets up out here, the flow pattern comes in and then does this. With the ridge over the southeast, it does that. And this just concentrates a lot of moisture here in the midsection of the country. Now, it's overdone. The National Blended Model always overdoes this with highly amplified patterns. But what you see here in parts of Idaho, getting into Wyoming, back into Montana, that is real. Very heavy precipitation anticipated here with the next few systems coming through. And as you can see, we start to see the flow coming over our mountains with that trough digging in, potentially bringing some moisture to the Sierra Nevada and, of course, into parts of Nevada. So this is good. This is a critical time of year for rain to prevent the late season fires. But there are a lot of folks in the Pacific Northwest specifically that need a break from some of the rain to get some field work done. I'm thinking about cutting hay and stuff like that. And that's because when you look over the last 14 days, we can see that much of the Pacific Northwest, save a small region here in the mountains, has seen near average to above average precipitation. Some locations much above average, picking up an additional 3 to 5 inches of rainfall over normal over the last 14 days. So we've had very short opportunities to get field work done, and we need to get more opportunities to get field work done. So let's kind of take a look at what we're anticipating in terms of precipitation getting us all the way out to midday on Thursday. So if we take this back and watch some of the systems coming through, this is, again, early morning on Tuesday, just some mountain-induced showers through parts of the Pacific Northwest. We're still dealing with some leftover showers down here in Arizona before an upper-level low takes over later in the day on Tuesday. So getting through, it's a relatively drier day for the Pacific Northwest. Again, our upper-level low, you can kind of see it spinning there if I step you back. Midday Tuesday to Tuesday evening, still over parts of Arizona. So some locally heavy rain still coming in. All right, looks as though parts of the Pacific Northwest may get through Tuesday evening and even into Wednesday relatively dry until our next system starts to show up. Here it is, by the time we get into Wednesday evening. Now at this time, the West Coast needs to watch two things. See our upper level lows still spinning here? So that's now over parts of the Southwest. We would have loved to have seen that back in June, July, and August. That is very typical of our southwestern monsoonal flow, but it's just now showing up much later in the season. Overnight, Wednesday into Thursday morning, that's when the next push comes in. So you can see it right there in the Pacific Northwest, all right? And don't be surprised if on Thursday morning we could get some widely scattered showers down here in Southern California. Now, bigger picture, stretching this out a little bit farther, let's get you all the way to Thursday morning where we just talked about, and watch this. As this next system sneaks in through the northwest, this is when the trough really starts to dig, such that by the weekend, here's our next system. So again, Thursday system coming through the northwest, short break, system comes in on Saturday, and now the trough is fully established. And what we start to see here, Look in the Intermountain West. We are going to be having cold enough temperatures in that trough such that at higher elevations, we're talking snow, potentially quite a bit of snow in parts of the northern Rockies there in Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, really Montana and Wyoming. And you just see that as that low curls up, that's bringing some pretty heavy snow into that area for the weekend. Now, early into next week, our next low emerges, and again, it puts down heavy snow in the higher elevations of Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. And well, as long as we stay in that deeper trough, we have 3 systems all doing this. The third one here pushing a little bit more over to Wyoming than it was over here in Idaho and Montana. And that seems to be the case of things for the foreseeable future. All right, and we still have one more system. Now I'm getting pretty far out there in the forecast beyond day 10, still coming into the northwest. So very active storm track staying in place over the coming days. Now what are our temperatures going to do in response? Well, like I said, the heat is still on in parts of California over the next few days here. In fact, we have red flag warnings in the Sacramento Valley here due to some stronger winds, 20 to 30 mile an hour gusts, and some warmer and drier conditions. But the Pacific Northwest stand on the cool side of things. We're looking at temperature anomalies for our high temperatures. So this was Tuesday, getting into Wednesday. Heat stays on in California, but cool in the northwest. Thursday, now we can really see the effects of 2 different things. Trough comes in northwest, upper level low spinning over the southwest. California in between, still warm. But by the end of the week, this is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you can see the deeper trough sweeping in, knocking temperatures in some locations 20 to almost 30 degrees colder than normal for this time of year. So the heat's on in California to start the week, and then we cool off beyond that. And that is certainly what we're seeing here. And while this is cooling off, maybe breaking some all-time record high temperatures over in parts of the Mid-South here. Now take a look specifically at the minimum temperatures because we have to start talking about frost and freezes here. So we can see that really to start the week, it's only higher elevations that are getting below freezing. But this is Tuesday. Watch Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now we're starting to see more widespread temperatures that are at or below freezing, even in parts of the high plains here, but not yet into the Columbia Basin or the Snake River Valley, but certainly out here in the eastern deserts of Oregon. But as I take you from Saturday into Sunday, now the trough is fully established, much below normal temperatures coming in here, and widespread freezes across much of the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be a function of elevation that'll tell you who gets the freezing temperatures and who doesn't. That's how it works in the west and northwest. So some much cooler than average weather coming in here. So we can put it all together and now look at these maps again, now that we understand what's going on. Next 5 days, yep, heat stays on in California, so we stay above average in temperatures there. But you see the first trough coming in here by Thursday, knocking temperatures down. Throughout much of the following 6 to 10 days, that's when we get into the deep trough, and we are off my color bar here in parts of Montana because I only go down to a minus 20 Fahrenheit, and you saw minus 30 in there. So very cool in that area. And just to show you, this tends to last all the way into the first full week of October until we finally kick this out and change up the flow pattern. But that's not going to happen until probably October 7th, 8th, and 9th when we get that blocking pattern setting up here. That's going to change things up a bit. So with that, we have major changes coming through the western part of the United States, multiple systems bringing in rainfall, both from the southwest to the northwest. Keep an eye on it on the radar. We'll keep you updated all week long at Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thank you for your attention. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.